He goes around the nation doing what I'm doing, helping people heal themselves, helping others understand why or how they can cure their cancers naturally. So this is my friend Chris Wark, who I'm delighted to introduce you to with Chris, his blog spot, chrisbeatcancer. Thank you very much, Chris.
I brought my PowerPoint. Okay, so I know a lot of people here were here last night, and so what I want to do is I want to just run through my little testimony real quick, and then I can get on to some details. But when I was 26, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, and they rushed me into surgery. They took out a third of my colon. They told me I was going to need 6 to 9 months of chemotherapy, and I didn't have a good feeling about it. The idea of poisoning my way back to health did not make sense. And I think for a lot of cancer patients that are in that situation, they instinctively do not want to do chemotherapy. They don't feel good about it. I think most of the people in this room maybe have known someone that had cancer, have had cancer themselves, and know what that feels like. And so, but the problem is that there's so much pressure from doctors, from family members, from friends, people that all mean well. There's so much pressure for you to just follow the prescribed path, to get on the conveyor belt and do the chemo, do the radiation, that many people do those treatments despite what they feel inside is the right thing for them, despite their intuition and their instincts and their conscience. And so I was in that position. I had surgery that took out a golf ball-sized tumor and some lymph nodes that had spread, so stage 3. The next step was 6 to 9 months of chemotherapy, which when they told me that, I accepted that that's what I was going to have to do. But as I sobered up, I just started to really not have a peace about it. And so, I mentioned this last night, but when we were in the hospital, the first meal they served me was a sloppy Joe. In the hospital, after cutting me open and taking out some of my intestines, right? And so that was sort of clue number 1 for me, that maybe the medical industry had no idea about nutrition. It wasn't even a part of healing. And of course, my surgeon gave me the advice of don't lift anything heavier than a beer. That was his nutritional advice for me. So those are 2 red flags. My wife and I prayed together, and basically just prayed, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, just show us. And I was reminded of a verse, and that is that God works all things for the good of those who love Him and who are called according to His purpose. So even though I was very afraid, I had no idea why I had cancer at 26, and I didn't know how much life I had left to live. I knew and I believed that God would work it for His good. He would work it for my good. And so I did trust Him in that way. So we prayed and asked for if there was some other way besides chemotherapy, just show us. And I got a book that was sent to me. It was mailed to me from a man in Alaska who I've never met, and it's called God's Way to Ultimate Health. In fact, that book is for sale here. Someone here, a vendor here, is selling it. I think he's set up outside if you want to buy that book. It's by George Malcolmus. He had colon cancer. He did not have surgery, didn't do chemo radiation, didn't do any of those therapies, but he radically changed his diet. And so when I started reading this book, I was like, wow, this is an answer to prayer. This is it. This is what I'm doing. So I immediately converted to a raw vegan diet and started juicing and drinking 8 glasses of vegetable juice every day. Now, when I told my family, they were not thrilled about my decision. They thought I was nuts. And basically, there were a lot of well-intentioned conversations that went something like this. You really need to do what the doctors say. I mean, they know best, and you got to do the chemo. I mean, if there were better therapies, they'd be using them, right? And so, trying to be the peacemaker, really, I was like, okay, all right, I'll go see the oncologist or whatever. So we went. My wife and I go to the cancer clinic. The lobby is packed. I mean, literally packed. I'm looking around. Yeah, I'm 26, okay, at the time. I'm looking around, looking for anybody else, maybe some other young people, kind of scoping out the situation, and everyone there was twice my age, at least. Everyone there had some gray hair. A lot of people had all gray hair. And I'm just thinking, God, I don't belong here. Like, there's no young people in here. It's just me and my wife. And the TV was on. We're sitting on the couch in the waiting room. The television's on. It's on one of the Today shows, like one of the morning shows. And out comes Jack LaLanne on the show. And he sits down and he starts going off about the reason we're sick is because we're poisoning our bodies, because we're putting all this man-made, processed, artificial, nutrient-deficient food in our bodies. And then our bodies thrive on food from the earth, plant food, fruits and vegetables. And juicing is a powerful way to get tons of juice, fruits and vegetable nutrients in your body. And so I'm like, can you believe this is on right now? You know, and my wife was like, yeah, that's pretty weird. You know, I can't believe this is on right now when we're in the cancer clinic waiting to see the oncologist. This is like, you know, a sign from above, like you're doing the right thing, you know. So we go in and talk to the oncologist, and he basically told me I had a 60% chance of living 5 years. And immediately I thought, geez, that's like barely better than a coin toss. Like that's the best, you know, hope they can give me is I have a 60% chance of living 5 years. And what I found out later was that statistic was actually for all cancer patients. Anybody diagnosed with cancer, no matter what kind of cancer, they lump you all into one big group, and you got a 60% chance of living 5 years. So it was not a colon cancer specific statistic, okay? And it doesn't even matter if you do chemo or not. And that's everybody with the diagnosis. 60% of them live 5 years. But he was just trying to tell me that to give me some hope, right? I asked him about alternative therapies. Because it had been a couple weeks, I'd already, you know, changed my diet, I was juicing, I started reading books, you know, and he said, there are none. He said, if you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane. I asked him about the raw diet, and he said, no, you can't do that, it'll fight the chemo. What does that mean? Anybody know? I'm sure some of you do. So fight the chemo means two things. One is when you're on a raw vegan diet, when you're juicing, eating tons of raw food, your body, it's a very aggressive detoxification and healing diet. And so your body starts detoxifying very fast, and when they put chemo in, it kicks it out. It won't hang around and linger and do the damage that they want it to do. So that's one reason why they don't want you to do it. But the other reason is because chemo destroys your immune system. And when your immune system is destroyed or compromised, then all of a sudden you are extremely susceptible to infections of any kind. And the bacteria on an apple could be a problem for you. So they don't want you to eat any raw food. Everything you have to eat is cooked because they're afraid that, you know, bacteria from the soil, it's actually beneficial could be a problem. So I learned all that later. He didn't tell me any of that. The last thing he said, as he was talking, and I was kind of zoning out as he was talking to me, but the third thing he said that was just imprinted in my mind was he said, you know, man, you know, I'm not telling you this because I need your business. He actually said that. Isn't that weird? But he said it. And I was in sales, and I know exactly what he was doing. It's called the push away. It's a sales technique. He was trying to push me away so I'd want to do it. I don't need your business. You know, but at that time, the business of cancer treatment was the furthest thing from my mind. I thought, doctors, they're these selfless people, and they're just working, you know, long hours to heal the sick, and then, you know, all this kind of stuff. And some of that's true, but it is a business. It's a profession. They go to school for 10 years, and, you know, it's very expensive to become a doctor. It takes a lot of time to get there. And they have houses and cars and kids and wives, and, you know, they've got to pay the bills. And they need patients. And every cancer patient represents at least $300,000 in revenue to the medical industry. Okay, that's surgery, blood work, lab work, scans, chemo, radiation, etc. Okay, that's a lot of money. Every patient. That's the average, is around $300,000. So we left the cancer clinic terrified. Okay, my wife and I got in the car. We sat in the car. And we held hands and we cried and we prayed and we were just freaking scared. Okay, even though I knew that God had answered my prayer and given me this book that kind of started me on my journey and opened my eyes. At the same time, there's a lot of fear and doubt when you're diagnosed with cancer. There's a lot of fear. It's an everyday thing you got to deal with. You're waking up and you're like, I got cancer. Oh, am I getting worse? Am I getting better? I don't know. Like, what's happening in my body? I'd be taking a shower just kind of thinking, like, what is going on in my body right now, And so that's where prayer came in, because I'm a Christian, so my prayer life was just supercharged. I was extremely dependent on God to lead me in the path of healing. That was my prayer. And one of my favorite chapters really is Psalm 34. Psalm 34 is, the righteous may suffer many afflictions, but the Lord delivers them from them all. And that to me was like, yes, like I can believe that. And that was like, to me, I had to know if it was God's will to heal me or not. And reading that, I was like, yes, it is. I think there's a problem today because a lot of people, and I'm really just talking to Christians here, just this little part, but a lot of people they're looking for reasons to stay sick. And they're not looking for reasons to get healed. They're looking in the Bible for reasons why maybe it's God's will for them to be sick and to stay sick, instead of looking for reasons why it's God's will for them to be healed and to be well. And I was looking for reasons to be healed and to be well. Okay? So that was a big part of it.